Hey everyone, I'm in Vietnam at the minute, having a whale of a time. Oh, bye. But I couldn't come all this way and not make a cheeky little archaeology video. I'm here in the History Museum of Ho Chi Minh City, and they've got something a little bit cool inside. Pretty cool, I would say. For a nerd like me, it's cool. That right there is a little Roman coin from Marcus Aurelius. What's that doing all the way in Vietnam? This little gold coin of Marcus's is a long way from home. It was probably turned into jewelry at some point because the top has been so carefully folded over. Could it be that this coin was brought to Vietnam by a Roman? That this was carried all the way here by a citizen of Rome? Could it be a tiny subtle clue of the longest expedition in Roman history? A Roman diplomatic mission to the ancient Chinese capital of Luoyang. That's what we're going to discuss today, drawing from both archaeology and history. We're going to piece together the evidence. I think you'll find it interesting. Not in Vietnam anymore. It's chilly. This video is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy easier and more accessible by putting it online. They can match you with one of 30,000 therapists on their network. And I think it's great to make healthcare more accessible like that. Me personally, I'm from a small city, right? Not a place with lots of resources. And I know people can wait months and months and months for healthcare, mental healthcare. And that's in this day and age, that's not necessary really, right? By using BetterHelp, you have access to a much wider amount of therapists. You can talk to therapists on video calls or regular calls or just messaging. Whatever works best with you. If you don't get on for whatever reason with the therapist that you have, you can switch at no extra cost. If you're thinking about therapy, why not give them a try? You can go to betterhelp.com/Stefan Milo for 10% off your first month. Okay, let's see how far these Romans got. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Stefan, one single coin. That's terrible evidence for an expedition. Coins get transferred between traders. Coins can move really far distances without any literal expedition taking place. The craziest example of this I've found comes from Okinawa, Japan. Katsuren Castle was occupied between the 12th and 15th centuries, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. Look at these people enjoying the sunset. Man, I'm jealous. I would love to see the sunset from the ruins of a Japanese castle. Anyway, here at Katsuren, archaeologists found several Roman copper coins dating to the 4th century. The easiest one to identify is this coin of Constantius II, son of Constantine the Great. It's extremely unlikely that a Roman brought them here during the Middle Ages. The Roman Empire by that point was just a nubbin around Constantinople. It's pretty incredible that 1,000 years of wheeling and dealing between merchants brought these little coins from somewhere in the Roman Empire all the way to Okinawa, Japan. So clearly you can see the problem with relying on coins as evidence for an expedition. Despite all of that though, despite the fact that coins can be in use for a very long period of time and coins can travel very far on their own, just going from trader to trader, despite all of those caveats and important nuance, this medallion, this coin, it still could have been carried here by a Roman. There is some more evidence connecting it to an expedition. This possible expedition first came to my attention when I read this article by Professor Nam C. Kim of the University Wisconsin-Madison. The coin of Marcus Aurelius and another Roman coin minted during the reign of Antoninus Pius were found at Ok Ao in the south of Vietnam. Ok Ao was an important port in the Mekong region between roughly 100 and 500 CE. As you might expect, it was home to Buddhists, but also Hindus. The Hindu religion was very influential in Southeast Asia at that time. This stela is one of the few historical documents found at Ok Ao. The text describes the consecration of a holy footprint of the god Vishnu by a prince Gunavarman. And the prince also built some drains. I tell you what, I love learning and saying the names of long dead people for the first time. Shout out to Prince Gunavarman, whoever you were. As a major port, Ok-Eo obviously had global connections to East Asia and India, but also to the Mediterranean world. Several artifacts of gold and glass and beads were either produced in the Mediterranean or inspired by artifacts from that area. Situated near the mouth of the Mekong, it really was a huge trade hub in its day. The Chinese called the polity in this area Funan, but the Romans may have had another name for it. Around the year 150, Alexandrian geographer Claudius Ptolemy was creating a new atlas called Geographia or Cosmographia, however you say that. Commonly now it's called Ptolemy's Geography. It has survived to us through medieval copies, and they're just absolutely stunning ancient maps, so beautiful. He was partly relying on older world maps, but also updating them with contemporary Roman and Persian accounts of the known world. He did make some mistakes. Scotland is very wonky, but maybe he just ran out of space. India is way too small, and Sri Lanka is absolutely huge. But what's important for our video is this region of Asia. This is almost certainly the Malay Peninsula, and down here, the other side of it, you have a town called Kattigara on the Kotiaris River. Where is this city? Where is Kattigara? Kattigara may come from the Sanskrit Koti Nagara, which means strong city. Its exact location is unknown. All we know is we have a city on the other side of the Malay Peninsula at the mouth of a large river. It certainly fits the description of Ok-Eo, modern Ok-Eo, but it could be somewhere else. It's hard to say for sure. It's pretty incredible, though, that enough people were traveling to this part of the world, to Southeast Asia, that old Ptolemy, back in Alexandria, could describe the Malay Peninsula, label towns and rivers, know that it was south of China. This whole region, Southeast Asia, it was known to the Romans. It was in contact with the Romans, however loosely. Someone had to be traveling there, and it's entirely possible that there were Romans on these voyages.
Now that map is a cool piece of evidence, but there's one other piece of evidence that we have. Chinese historical records. I'm in the Kuji tunnels. Woo. Whoa.
Okay, now for this part of the video, I am relying on an article written by Joshua Hall, Dr. Joshua Hall, all credit to him, shout out. In the 5th century CE, the Chinese were writing a history book called the Hao Hanshu, or the History of the Later Han. In this text, they describe an ambassador visiting their capital at Luoyang from Da Qin, aka the Roman Empire, in the year 166. In the 9th Yangtze year, during the reign of Emperor Huan, the king of Da Qin, Andun, sent envoys from beyond the frontiers through Renan to offer elephant tusks, rhinoceros horn, and turtle shell. This was the very first time there was direct communication. The tribute brought was neither precious nor rare, raising suspicion that the accounts might be exaggerated. How fantastic is that? The first contact between Rome and China preserved in this ancient Chinese book. There are a couple of things to note here. First, it is during the reign of Marcus Aurelius. Another small plus for this expedition for our humble coin. Second, that they arrived through Renan in what is now central Vietnam. Again, a small plus for our expedition. So if we have ancient coins, Roman maps, and Chinese historical accounts, why isn't this voyage more well known? Maybe it's known to you, but from me, casual interest in Roman history, I think this is not as famous an event as it should be. This would be one of the greatest expeditions in human history. Okay, time for some obligatory nuance. Why is there skepticism around this voyage ever taking place? Well, nuance number one, we don't have any Roman sources for this voyage, for this expedition, for this embassy. That's true. It's undeniable. However, it's important to bear in mind, we don't have 99.999% of all the Roman documents ever written. Arguably the job of the Roman emperor, the entire job, really day to day, was receiving and responding to letters. They had almost certainly a whole bureaucracy around him to help with that. And yet, almost none of them survive today. Barely any of them. So the fact we don't have a surviving Roman document about a one-off diplomatic mission, shouldn't necessarily surprise us. I don't think that should be a major objection to this voyage taking place. Second point of nuance, the ambassadors didn't bring anything of value to the Chinese emperor. Just tusks and horns and tortoise shell, stuff the Chinese could easily acquire on their own. This has led some scholars apparently to speculate that this was not a proper embassy, an official embassy from the Roman Empire, that these were merchants, perhaps from Alexandria, just trying to do business in China, trying to create good connections with the Chinese government. We'll never really be able to say if that's true or not. Without more historical sources, that's really impossible to say. It is worth noting two things. The comments about the tribute not being valuable and the accounts potentially being exaggerated. It is entirely possible that this was the judgment of the author, writing this down several hundred years later. We don't know if that was truly the opinion of the people at the time. But even if it was, and even if the ambassadors didn't really bring anything special to the emperor, again, we have to bear in mind Rome is very, very far away from China. There are all sorts of reasons why any ambassadors making their way across the Indian Ocean might have lost their gifts. Shipwrecks, robbery, pirates. They could have been victim to any number of these events. Third obligatory nuance, why would Marcus Aurelius send these ambassadors to China in the first place? I mean, first of all, you could just argue that he did it out of human curiosity, that human curiosity that drives everything we do. The Romans knew China existed, and at some point, Marcus Aurelius, philosopher emperor, might have been curious enough to just send an ambassador, see what happens. We'll obviously never be able to answer that for sure, but the Chinese documents may provide a small clue. The king of this country always wanted to send envoys to the Han, but Anzi, wishing to control the trade in multicolored Chinese silks, blocked the route to prevent the Romans getting through to China. It could be that the Romans were looking for a better way to trade with China than the Silk Road. At the time these ambassadors would have left Rome and arrived in China, Marcus Aurelius was at war with the Parthian Empire. He would win the war in the year 166, the same year the ambassadors arrived, but it's not unreasonable to think that he might have sought contact with a large empire on the other side of Parthia. Even if he didn't have grand ambitions of Rome and China joining a military alliance against the Parthians, couldn't hurt, right, to send ambassadors to the state on the other side of the empire you're at war with. That's a pretty reasonable reason for Marcus Aurelius to want to do that.
So that's the argument I've got for you. We have a Roman map probably showing the Malay Peninsula and land and the world on the other side of it. We have a Roman coin from Marcus Aurelius here in Vietnam, and we have Chinese historical accounts that say that, again, probably Marcus Aurelius sent a mission, an embassy, an envoy, whatever you want to call it, to their capital in Luoyang through Vietnam, through Renan, their city, their outpost in what is now northern Vietnam. Is there a lot of nuance? Are there some caveats to consider? Of course. We're talking about a one-off event that happened 2,000 years ago. Of course, there's lots of nuance to consider. But we shouldn't let that nuance stop us from entertaining the very real possibility that this mission really happened. That this is truly the furthest evidence we have of Romans traveling around the world. I've worked it out here. I've brought up Google Maps. I've got Rome to Luoyang on the computer. It would be a distance of 20,245 kilometers. Look at that. How many miles is that? 12,579 miles. Centimeters, 2,024,504,062 centimeters, of course. Of course, you know that's what it is. What a fantastic journey. Gosh, I wonder if they made it home too. That's a long way. They may well not have done. Shout out to these Roman ambassadors. Hope it worked out well for you. Boop. Thanks for watching. Hello. Chào buổi sáng.
Ciao, boys.